everybody. Once again, Peter Greenberg here on this Tuesday in December, almost the midpoint of the month, with our global travel update, this time from Chicago. And hope you're having a great time wherever you happen to be. Next week, we'll be doing it again on Tuesday. Just a note, it'll be the 21st, and we'll be doing it from a galaxy far, far away from here. No clues yet. We'll get to that later. First, let's talk about, we have so much to talk about today, ranging from hotel resort fees to the draconian basic economy fare tickets and some of the new rules, what's going on with the new variants and what you need to know about that with shutdowns around the world, what the airlines are doing because they're not just short of pilots, they're now short of planes and where they're pulling back. Some interesting developments there. But of course, we're still talking about unruly and disruptive passengers. That's not going away. The strange thing is, of the more than 5,500 cases reported, or obviously more than that, but of the ones reported by the FAA, they've only referred about 50 of them, maybe 55 of them, to the U.S. Department of Justice for prosecution. How many have been prosecuted? 0. You've seen all the fines that have been announced, some as much as $47,000 an incident. How many of those fines have been paid even partially? Same answer, 0. What's the deterrent factor of these things? 0. So let's hope that people come to their senses. And we already have airlines announcing they're returning the sale of in-flight alcohol. Crazy. Wow. Deck the halls with logic and common sense for the Christmas season. Somebody's not doing that. But of course, I wouldn't be here if I didn't have at least a little bit of a sense of humor. I wanted to show you what somebody posted on the web today. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do this, but I'm just suggesting it was fun, kind of fun to read. Let's post that. Do you ever wake up, kiss the person sleeping beside you, and feel glad that you're alive? I just did that, and apparently will not be allowed on this airline again. All right, that's my sense of humor applied to the disruptive passengers and those 5,500 cases. We can move on now. Let's talk about resort fees. As you may have heard a couple of weeks ago, there's been a settlement in one of the lawsuits. An agreement's been reached between Marriott and the Pennsylvania State Attorney General, in which Marriott now promises to unmask those resort fees and prominently display them on the same page that they're announcing what you're supposed to be paying for your room rate. So that's a first step. It is by no means an only step. And if anyone wants to comment on that, you know how to find me. Just send your comments in here and your questions. I should also tell you that if you can't get through today, you can always email me to peter@petergreenberg.com. We'll answer it either online or on our radio show, which comes, of course, every Saturday from a different location somewhere around the world. This week is no different. From 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we also stream it live. So if you can't find a radio station, you can always listen in no matter where you are in the world. Now let's go back to resort fees. The idea that they're now agreeing to a different definition of terms and will be actually displaying those resort fees doesn't deal with the issue of why there are resort fees and what the inherent deception is in resort fees, because there is an inherent deception. It's no different, by the way, than what's happening post-COVID. I would like to say post-COVID, but we're now in COVID. Let's not kid ourselves. With hotels cutting back on services, but still charging their regular rates. Here's a situation with resort fees where you think you're paying a regular rate that's all-inclusive, and it doesn't include any of the other things that you come to expect in the world of hotels and hospitality. So they don't want you to dissect, to deconstruct the pie. They want you to pay extra for everything. And that's the so-called resort fee. Or some hotels have tried to get away with it, the destination fee. When a lot of urban hotels, including some here in Chicago, tried to call it a resort fee. I'm sorry, there's nothing resort about an urban hotel in the Windy City, or any other city for that matter. But moving on, this is just a first step. Now, it does set some precedent, which is great, but it doesn't relieve you of the responsibility of pinning down these hotels to a mutually agreeable definition of terms as to what you're paying for, even if they now finally disclose it, and whether or not it's optional. I've always believed it's optional. If I'm staying at a hotel and they're going to charge me a mandatory resort fee to use the health club, the pool, a towel, a beach chair, et cetera, and I'm not using any of those things, why should I pay for them? And if you want to charge me for them, then charge me for them if I use them, right? So the battle's not over yet, but remember this. Just because Marriott has agreed to this doesn't necessarily mean that all the other hotels or privately owned hotels are going to follow suit immediately. Remember, so much of this gets into failure to disclose before we even get to the definition of terms of what constitutes an acceptable charge for a resort fee. So be on the lookout for it. It's not going away anytime soon. It's a good first step on the settlement with the Pennsylvania State Attorney General, but it's by no means over. And if a hotel, no matter what happened in the Pennsylvania case, if a hotel does not disclose the resort fee when you make your reservation, if they do not disclose the resort fee when you check in, and the only time you find out about it is when you get your bill, which of course is already charged to your credit card because you gave that to them when you checked in, you have a right to dispute the charge, and you have an obligation, since we're so close here, to email me, peter@petergreenberg.com, and let me know what happened. All right, so that's the resort fee issue. Now let's get to another punitive charge. I call it punitive because we're going to define it. The basic economy airline ticket. Let's decide what that is. A basic economy airline ticket, with very few exceptions, means you get no seat assignment. You cannot check a bag. You can't refund it. It's a use it or lose it proposition. And in some cases, depending on the airline, you can't even bring on a carry-on bag. I like to joke that the basic economy fare is perfect if you're A, a fugitive from justice, or B, you're in the witness relocation program and you're traveling very light. It's almost a fare designed to upsell you to something else because it's punitive. Well, remember when the airlines about a year ago announced, which was done right here in Chicago by United Airlines, they were getting rid of those draconian ticket change fees. Everybody thought that was great. It was great. I thought it was great. But the airlines made an exception at that point. Every single fare type except basic economy. It remained use it or lose it. Well, this week, Delta Airlines made an additional announcement. If that wasn't injurious enough, if you do fly on a basic economy ticket, you get no miles. No frequent flyer miles. Now, think about this. In the old days, probably 3 years ago, if I flew 2,500 miles from LA to New York and paid a discount ticket, $200, I still got a minimum of 2,500 miles. If I was in business or first, there were bonuses attached. If I was a mega frequent flyer, there were bonuses attached, other bonuses based on what credit card you used, et cetera, et cetera. But at least I got the minimum number of miles I physically actually flew. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, the airline said, no, we want to make more money here. We're making the earning of miles more difficult. We're making it a fare-based system. So if I paid full fare, I got at least that many number of miles, the 2,500 in that example, plus other bonuses for flying first class, et cetera. But if I flew a discount ticket, I might have only gotten 400 miles for that 2,500 mile trip. So they made it more difficult. They were already making it more difficult to redeem the miles. Now they made it more difficult to earn the miles. Now, put that thought on hold. What happened earlier this year and last year? The airlines were desperate to raise capital. So they valued, I remember American Airlines valuing their own Advantage program, their frequent flyer program, at something like $34 billion. And every airline, the big ones, American, United, Delta, they went out and mortgaged these programs and generated per airline between $6 and $10 billion in cash. And they needed the money. I get it. It also showed us how much they valued those programs, how much money those programs were making. How many unredeemed frequent flyer miles do you think there are out there right now? Legitimate, hard-earned miles that have not yet been redeemed. Try 23 trillion, and you're probably sitting on a few of them yourselves. So let's go back. The airlines now mortgage their programs for between $6 and $10 billion each. We're talking about the 3 legacy carriers. That's a lot of debt. They got to figure out how to pay that back. Well, one of the ways you pay that back is what? Making it difficult to earn and difficult to redeem miles. Because Well, what's the presumption here is that when you redeem a mile or miles for a ticket, you might be displacing a revenue passenger. That doesn't happen very often because the airlines really do yield management here and make it almost impossible. But that's the thought from an accounting point of view. It's also the thought from an accounting point of view that those 23 trillion miles results in a contingent liability on your annual report, right? You're carrying that on the books. They don't want to do that. So that's where we are right now. No miles for you if you're flying on a basic economy ticket. So why would you fly on that ticket anyway? Miles or no miles? Let's go back. You can't get a seat assignment. Welcome to the middle seat. You can't check a bag. You can't, in many cases, take on a carry-on bag. And it's a use it or lose it proposition. So let's do a fare analysis. Because when you go online to any of the OTAs, almost inevitably, the first thing that pops up is that basic economy fare, which may not be listed as such, but that's what it is. And of course, we're all motivated by getting the cheapest fare without realizing what it doesn't include, right? What you're not allowed to do. And in many cases, not all, but on average, the next fare category up is only about $30 more. That's a very cheap insurance policy for you to be able to what? Cancel the flight and not lose your money, at least check a bag, and at least maybe get a seat, depending on the rules of each airline. So it's a punitive fare, made more punitive this week by Delta, saying no miles for you. So they're almost forcing everybody not to fly it. And again, if you haven't robbed a bank, if the police are not chasing you, if the U.S. Justice Department doesn't want to give you a new identity, then you know what? Maybe you could fly that. I don't know. But other than those three examples, I wouldn't suggest it. All right, that's the report on that. Now, let's keep moving on here because we have other things to talk about. Airlines are now cutting flights. And why is that? Well, we saw it happen only about a month ago when American pulled out of about 26 cities or severely reduced service. United did about 10 that they either reduced or took off the schedule entirely. They had overscheduled their airlines. But now we have another compounding factor. Because at the same time, airlines were cutting back on routes to this country. They really wanted to bump them up overseas. They wanted to get back out. In fact, United Airlines has announced more new routes in their system internationally than in the entire history of their airline. It's wild. American this week pulled back. Why? Because they didn't want to fly the routes? No, they do want to fly the routes. There's a problem. It's called the 787 Dreamliner. Huge issues in production, quality control, technical problems. Boeing's not making their deliveries on time. As a result, the airline can't support those long-haul flights. They do not have the planes. So double check your schedules because they're changing radically over the next 3 weeks. Now, they can afford to do that over the next 3 weeks during the low travel months of January, February, and March. But come April, who knows what's going to happen because that's really when they wanted to fly these routes, right? Most of the new international routes that they've announced kick in May, not January. So be careful. Watch that carefully. All right. Moving on. Frequent Flyer Program Part 2. I mentioned the 23 trillion miles. I have to appeal to your sense of mathematics and common sense. I don't trust the airlines as airlines. Why would I trust them as banks? Why are you holding on to your frequent flyer miles? You're not earning interest. They're being devalued as often as they can because of this huge debt load they're taking on by mortgaging those programs. So today's the day you should get out a calendar. Look either 6 months ahead or 330 days out. And pick places that none of your friends want to go to. It's not about them. It's about using miles effectively and efficiently. And start cashing them in now while you can. Because after January 1 rolls around, you're going to see availability drop. You know, they used to have charts to show you availability. They don't even have those anymore. They're calling it dynamic pricing. There's nothing about dynamic pricing that benefits you. Zero. You need to get in there now while everybody is sleeping during Christmas and redeem those miles for flights you want to take in 2022. Keeping miles in your account is not productive. And How many of you, now be honest, I know who you are, got those solicitations over the last couple of years to redeem your miles for magazine subscriptions or for boxes of chocolate or even a toaster? This is like a warped version of the S&H Green Stamps Day. And how many of you did that? Be honest. I know a lot of you did. You know why? Because you're having such a difficult time redeeming your miles. You figure, well, I might as well get that subscription to People magazine because it's better than nothing. Now we're going to do the math. Remember I said I'm going to appeal to your sense of math? Okay, fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. 54% of all mileage earned right this minute is earned by people who are not flying. It's on their affiliated credit cards, whether it's the Delta card for American Express or Citibank for American or Chase for United, right? And they're accruing miles a lot. Now the banks and the financial institutions that run these credit cards, they know how valuable that is because they want you to keep using those cards for buying everything to earn miles that you're then going to have difficulty paying. Well, every year, American gets a check for at least $1 billion from Citibank. United gets a check for at least $1 billion from Chase, and American Express writes one to Delta. And they know that, knowing full well that the annual redemption rate of the number of miles earned versus the number of miles redeemed is only about 8%. With all respect, mafia loan sharks don't get that rate of return. It's the best deal ever for the airlines and for the banks. Not a great deal for you. So now let's do the numbers. 54% of all miles earned on the ground. So assuming the airline does have a seat available and will redeem it for you for 25,000 miles for that traditional coach domestic ticket, that means you spent about 14,000 real dollars, not counting the miles you flew, to get to that 25,000 mile figure to be able to redeem a ticket that might only cost $300 retail. Do you really understand how crazy the system works and it doesn't work for you? Okay, so much for a free ticket. But now let's get back to redemption. You get the solicitation in the mail for a magazine subscription, Reader's Digest or People or Popular Mechanics, whatever the magazine is, and you go, great, and you redeem 3,500 miles for that subscription. Let's go back to that 54% figure. You just spent $1,800 for People magazine. Feeling good now? You better frame it and put it on the wall. It gets worse. 2 years ago, Delta Airlines was offering a redemption of Godiva chocolates. Nice little box of Godiva chocolates, 6,500 miles. Well, we did a little work. We did the research. We found that that box of Godiva chocolates retails about 18 pieces of chocolate in that box. It retails for $40. You just spent $3,500 for that box of chocolate. I hope you enjoy your bonbons. Chew it slowly, savor it, and never do that again. Again, you need to use miles the way they were first intended to be used. To redeem you for your loyalty, number one, and to go to places you wanted to go to. So when we're finished today, get out the calendar, look at your mileage balance, start thinking ahead from January to May or all the way through 330 days from today and redeem those miles. Do not wait. You will not be happy if you do. All right, that's my lecture on mileage. I hope you listen to me. Now, let's go to some of your notes. Patty Ford says, what hotel am I in Chicago? I'm not going to reveal that. I want my privacy. Thank you for your note, Alexander. We'll get back to you in a second. Patrick says, greetings from Waikiki. Patrick's spending a lot of time in Hawaii. Jew is saying greetings from Japan. Jew is always in Japan. Carlos says hi. Mike Lucan says hi, but he hasn't told me where he is today. Carlos says, hello from the DRC. Okay, let's hear it for the Congo. Kay says, how nice to have you in our town. Let me say a few words about Chicago. Some of you know I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, so I was in Chicago every other weekend. Chicago is America's best, biggest, most underrated city. It is a tremendous city. I always love it here. My journalism career just started in Madison, Wisconsin, but my newspaper career, other than a student paper in Wisconsin, really started here at the Chicago Tribune back in 1980 with a travel editor who was here named Harriet Choice. A shout out to Harriet, wherever you may be. I hope you're still with us. Haven't talked to you in years, but I owe you a lot. And every chance I come back here. Now, I'm a single slice, thin crust pizza guy, so I don't do very well in the deep dish area of Chicago. But other than that, this is the place to be. All right, Chuck Mardix. Hello, Chuck from New York. Okay, here's one. Julie says, how comfortable would I be booking Paris for President's Weekend in February? Very comfortable with two caveats. Use a U.S. airline to do it. In case there's a cancellation, you'll see your money. And make sure you understand what the refund rules are versus credits or vouchers, where the hotel is where you want to book in Paris. Once you have that under control, you go. Okay. Kay's in Joliet, Illinois. Okay. Patty's in Winnetka. Okay. Robert says hello from Houston. Oh, really? Miss Kilgore says, I love Chicago, one of my favorite cities, except during the winter. Burr. I love Chicago in the winter, too. Now, Madison, Wisconsin in the winter, triple layers. Triple layers. But no, I don't come to Chicago for a suntan. I come to Chicago for the energy, for the people, for the food. Can't beat it. Okay. All right. Patty Ford says, no luggage, no problem. All right. Oh. Ellen says, I bought basic economy ticket with an online airline branded credit card. I checked a bag at no charge. Yes, there are exceptions. If you are using one of the airline branded credit cards that gives you one free check bag, the airline sometimes, not always, will look the other way. If you're one of their elite players, a concierge key member at American, a global services member at United, or a Delta, I think it's a Delta 360 member at Delta, they might do the same. But that doesn't apply to 98% of the people watching this today. All right, Uganda's back on the boards here from Crust. All right. Okay. Celeste's saying she's in St. Martin aboard the Seabourn Ovation. All right, Celeste, congratulations. Patty Ford says, Qatar Air business class ticket redeemed. All right. Well, you picked probably the best business class ticket next to Singapore. They vie for it in the world. The Q suite on Qatar is unbelievable. You know, if you're on a 12 or 13-hour flight and you're hoping the flight doesn't end, you're either crazy or it's a really great seat. And in the case of Qatar, it's a really great seat. Singapore, a couple of years ago, when they introduced their business class seat, it was very wide. I mean, really wide. And the Singaporeans, not known for their sense of humor, when they had their press conference, made an announcement that actually got them a lot of bookings, but not because of what they intended. They showed the seat and they said, we want to insist that this seat is for only one passenger only. Listen, if you're traveling with a significant other, you can cuddle. All right, my friend Peter in Rwanda. Okay. Patty Ford wants to know where Anthony is. Anthony's in Los Angeles. He's handling the boards there for us today. So Anthony says hi. Rajendra is watching from Nepal. All right. Listen to this. Alexander reports that in Europe, it's gotten even worse. Lufthansa and Swiss Air, by the way, they're not together really, but they are, reduced miles to earning just a quarter value per mile. 2022 is going to be the year of mileage devaluation, boys and girls. Redeem your miles in 2021. Listen to me. Okay, Stephen wants to know about thoughts about travel now with the new COVID strain. They're the same thoughts I had last week and the week before that and the week before that. Let's come to grips with a fact. COVID is not going to get eradicated, but we are going to manage it. And that's what we're doing, right? If you take a look at the spike in cases around the world, 99% of that spike is with unvaccinated people. Get real. We only have anecdotal evidence so far about the effectiveness of the current vaccines against the latest strain, but the initial reports are we're in good shape. You're not going to go to the hospital. Most of us won't. And it's taking death off the table for most of us. I can't speak for everybody with pre-existing conditions or another interesting medical history. But if you're healthy, you're vaccinated, you've got your booster, you're in pretty good shape. I'd like to think I'm in pretty good shape. It hasn't stopped me from traveling anywhere as long as you play by the rules, listen to the protocols, and don't try to skirt it. Okay? Uh, Robert says, I had fun in Zion 2 weeks ago. All right. And Ellen's coming to Chicago later this week. Hello from Iceland from Torun Reynesdotter. Okay. Nancy's, are you buying lunch today? I'm in Buffalo Grove. No, Nancy, I'm not going to be in Buffalo Grove. But thank you for the invitation for me to buy you lunch. Someone's in, someone talking from Lake Monona. We know where that is, Madison, Wisconsin. All right. I don't think the lake's frozen today. I think Madison's in the 40s today. So is Chicago, by the way. All right. Patty says 60 degrees in Chicago tomorrow. I brought a coat. I'm not wearing it. Okay. Ellen says, going to Jordan in March, should I book on Qatar or AA, code share with Royal Jordanian? Well, look, it's all a code share. If you're going to Jordan, you're flying Royal Jordanian. No matter what the airline says, it's all code shared under the One World Alliance. So I would book it on AA for the same reason I told you before. It's going to still be a Royal Jordanian plane, but it's American Airlines ticket stock, which means if you have a problem, you have a much better chance of getting your money back. It's a U.S. carrier. Okay? Okay, here's a question. Will we ever see the day when flights are not so packed and overhead compartment space is available? No. Right now, good friend of ours, Gary Leff, who writes a wonderful column that you can get online called viewfromthewing.com, always entertaining and informative. Gary describes travel today. He describes passengers today. Hear this now. We're self-loading cargo. I give him credit for that line, but I'm using it. Okay. California rules effective today say COVID test on arrival is needed for domestic travel. How on earth will they enforce it? I don't know. I remember not too long ago when I'd be landing at LaGuardia and there'd be National Guard troops there asking you to fill out a form, attesting to the fact that you didn't have COVID, you weren't exposed to it, you were fine to go, and blah, blah, blah. And they wanted to do contact tracing. One small problem with that. Nobody was matching what I was writing on that piece of paper on that form to my actual driver's license address or to my phone number. I could have put down Alfred E. Newman's name for those people who remember who he is, and nobody would have checked. And by the way, the fifth time I did it, I wrote down Alfred E. Newman. Nobody cared. So your question may be somewhat rhetorical. They don't have the staff to enforce it. We're still on the honor system here, and not everybody behaves. All right, Ted says hello from Naples. Thank you for those nice notes, Ted. I appreciate that. Patty says Royal Jordanian. That's who flies it nonstop. Joan says we recently flew first class in Alaska, which was the same price as coach if you factor in paying for checked luggage. First class, no charge. P.S. We redeemed our miles earlier this year for gift cards. All right. You know what? If they're redeeming it for cash, it sounds good, but look what you just said at the end of your note to me, Joan. Better than nothing. You redeemed your gift cards at $450. Okay, please tell me this, and I want you to be honest. How many miles did you have to redeem to get to $450? Then let's do the math and see if that's a good idea. Okay. On December 11th, Steve says, Hawaii has to accept a 72-hour COVID test for entry without a 10-day quarantine. Can this be in place of the QR code obtained using the Safe Travels Hawaii program, or is it necessary to do both? Right now, Steve, it's necessary to do both, and but Hawaii's open. Steven says, I'm going to Turkey in May. Good choice. When should I book a flight? Why not right now? Do it now. In fact, if you got miles, use the miles now. My understanding is until next week, if you have miles on Turkish, they're giving you a 30% discount on the miles needed to redeem. You don't see those things often, but they just did that. Someone's saying hello from Patmos. I love Patmos. I was there this summer. Beautiful, quiet, lovely island. Okay. Do you feel if going to Europe in 2022, which airlines are offering the best cancellation policies? None of them. except the U.S. carriers that will not take your money back in terms of a draconian ticket change fee. They'll put credits in your account at no charge and no devaluation. There's no premium that you're paying for that. Okay. Terry saying hello from California, Route 66. Okay, now it's time. Let's go to the picture of the week. Any tell me what it is? Any guesses? I'm going to pull it up on my screen right now. All right. The person who took that picture is Andy Gordelli, and taken in the United States, wasn't taken in South Africa, wasn't taken in Europe, wasn't taken in Asia. What's that leave? South Pacific. That's Cradle Mountain National Park in Tasmania. We love Cradle Mountain. If you take a look at the distribution of land in Tasmania, it's all natural forest and national park. It's a phenomenal location. It's only about an hour and a half flight from Melbourne to Hobart, and well worth the trip. So Andy, thank you. And Andy writes, this national park gives a person the feeling that they're the only one in this beautiful area, and Dove Lake is in front. So Andy, thank you for sending that. If you've got a photo that you think qualifies as the photo of the week, do what Andy did. Send it in, peter@petergreenberg.com. And if we like it, we post it. Andy, again, thank you for that. We've got some questions coming in from you. And this one begs some logic here, not from the person who asked it, but from the airlines. Scott asks, what are the airlines going to do when their most loyal flyer status continues to be reduced due to lack of travel? When one goes from executive level on American all the way down to platinum or gold because they can't travel. What the airlines have been doing so far is kicking the can down the road, right? They're extending your status for another year. So my status at American, Delta, and United has been extended now to I think either January or February of 2023. So the miles that I earned in 20 and 21 sort of roll over into 2022 and help me qualify for whatever status I'm going to be hopefully able to get in 2023. But once again, if nobody's traveling this year coming up, will they extend it again? My guess is they won't, because at a certain point, it's the point of diminishing returns for everybody. So that's the answer to your question. All right, here's one from Mary. Book you to San Diego for July on points for air. You said book now. What about hotel points? Book now? You bet. Do it now. It's one thing to shop for airfares, and there's times of the year that you want to do it and times of the year you don't. But if you're booking that far ahead on points, they're never going to go up. I mean, excuse me, they're never going to go down. Redemption levels are going to go up, so get it while you can. Adriana says, I'm planning a trip to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Any advice for me? Well, Argentina's open now. This is the time of year to go. It's their summer. You go between now and March. If you're doing Buenos Aires, do some day trips down south to the estancias. Not the touristic ones, but the real family-owned and operated ranches. You can find them. Of course, there's always the Sunday market in San Telmo. I go there for one reason, because they still have all the original antique pewter seltzer bottles. I have a wonderful collection, and they're not outrageously expensive. Other antiques are there as well. Some sort of bad street tango as well, but it's a fun place to go early in the morning on Saturday or Sunday in Buenos Aires, only because by noon it gets overcrowded and all the really cool things are gone. But remember, you also want to go to the other neighborhoods of Buenos Aires, right? Palermo for one. I mean, great food. And if you like steak, I haven't had meat since 2008. I miss it. But if you still eat meat, there's some unbelievable restaurants in Argentina. When I go there, I'm a dead man because that's all there is meat. But if you love meat, there's a restaurant not far from San Telmo, which I love, called La Brigada. The meat there is so tender. When they come to your table, they cut the meat table side with a spoon. I'm telling you, it's great. Okay, let's move on. Steven says, can you confirm the requirements for driving across the U.S. border to Canada through Buffalo? Vaccination cards, COVID tests, both ways? All right, here's the deal. If you're vaccinated, you're going to need a COVID test. You're going to need a PCR test. Then they'll let you into Canada, provided you take a test when you get there as well. Now, if you're coming from any of the same African nations that we banned, you can't, right? South Africa, Lesotho, Namibia, etc. But other than that, you can go. But remember, testing on both sides of the border now. All right, Lori says we booked a trip on TAP Airlines, Portugal, from the U.S. to Faro in Portugal, in the Algarve. With COVID on the rise and CDC listing Portugal as a level 4 travel health notice, we want to take advantage of the one free change per reservation listed in our terms and conditions. Can I discuss level 4 before I answer Lori's question? Can we be real here? There's a level 4 warning to everything, including Antarctica now. I don't see penguins frothing at the mouth and glowing in the dark. It's all about their rise in COVID tests, COVID test cases. But if you've been double vaccinated, if you've gotten your booster shot, if you're wearing a mask, if the country hasn't shut down to its own people, then you go after you talk to your doctor. And if he or she tells you you can go, then I can tell you can go. Level 4 is misleading. It's CYA time, guys. It's no different than the State Department level 4. Look, I just came back from Mexico. There's a level 4 there. Why? Because it's been in place all these years. Doesn't mean I felt unsafe or threatened in Mexico. Now, are there places in Mexico I wouldn't go? Yeah, I'm not jumping to go to Nuevo Laredo or Ciudad Juarez. Okay, we all saw Narcos, but Cabo San Lucas? Are you kidding me? Mazatlan? You calling that a level 4? That's absurd. Look, if there's a drive-by shooting here in Chicago, and we all know there have been those, it doesn't stop me from coming to Chicago. Let's get real. Now, if you want to alert me that there's certain neighborhoods I don't want to go in Chicago, Cleveland, Wyoming, or Nebraska after 8 o'clock at night, thank you. I'll take that under advisement. But it's not going to stop me from going to those locations in general. So the answer to your question, Lori, before you want to change your reservation is, why wouldn't you go to Portugal when you're reserved for it, as long as your doctor tells you can go, you've been vaccinated, you got your booster shot, and you're going to play by the rules? Well, let me finish your question. But we discovered the one free change at TAP means something different when flying TAP. With TAP, it means you have to book a new flight immediately with new dates. Do we have any other options? Yeah, I just gave it to you. Go. By the way, check something else out with TAP. They have a program that if you fly nonstop round trip between the US and Lisbon, they throw in on some of these programs a free stop in any one of 45 other locations they fly in the world. How about that? Not heavily promoted, but it's there. Okay, Beth says, can you tell me more about JFK's new COVID monitoring program? I can. It's a voluntary program for people arriving to the US. It gives you free testing at the airport. But then again, it's sort of a double, it's a little bit repetitive because you couldn't get to JFK without having a test within 24 hours of your departure from overseas. So unless you think you're going to contract COVID on the flight itself, I'm worried about the efficacy of this, but it's there. It's free. It's voluntary for incoming passengers only, not outgoing, and it's done at the airport. Okay, Miriam says, I was planning to go to Kenya at the end of the month. What is the likelihood that I'll still be able to go? The last I looked, Kenya was not on the list. So the likelihood right now, pretty good. Will, are there any restrictions or quarantine requirements for Hawaii? Same question as earlier, specifically Maui. No, you have to have vaccination. You have to show your vaccination card. You have to have a PCR test, right? I believe it's within 72 hours of going to Hawaii, and you're good to go. Okay, Sam asked a very interesting question. Do I think travel demand is really down because of Omicron? I do not. We're seeing a lot of passengers cancel flights to certain destinations that may either be restricted or in lockdown. That doesn't mean they're not traveling. That means they're booking somewhere else. The horses have left the barn here. We're all traveling. We may be making different choices about location. Remember, it's no longer a situation of, are we going to go, where we're going to go, whether we're going to go, or if we're going to go. Right now, let's be honest, it's only a question of how we're going to go. And that's why I talk to you every week. We discuss the how, because that's the importance. Let me just see if there are any more questions. Here's an interesting one. Frank says, the world has changed everywhere. Can you please encourage your watchers to call their hotel concierge prior to reaching their destination? Great advice, especially if the hotel concierge is a member of CLEDOR. That's the Association of Truly Informed, Educated, Wise Concierges. And you don't have to be staying at the hotel to talk to them. People don't realize that. You want local knowledge, and you want on the ground, cutting edge today. All the years before you get there. Great advice. Thank you for that. Okay. Okay. I'm looking at a few more questions here. Patty Ford says, huge portions in Argentina. You're not kidding. Okay. Robert says, Americans got some great web specials for peanuts. Web specials on fares and occasionally web specials on frequent flyer redemption. Okay. Well, there you go. My driver, Nick from Patmos. Nick, I'm glad you came on board. Thank you, man. You were there when I did the show. I love it. Okay. I think we've done it. I've got work to do this afternoon, getting ready for a number of other programs we're going to be doing. I will see you on the radio on Saturday, and I'm flying off this Thursday. I won't tell you where, but you'll find out next Tuesday when you tune in at the same time, noon Eastern time, for our global travel update on Facebook. Thank you guys for watching. Anthony, thank you for handling everything back in Los Angeles, and we'll see you next week, if not sooner, on CBS.